Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. You may be aware that recently I have been recreating my own copy of the Advanced Heroquest expansion Terror in the Dark. This expansion, well, supplement really, it even refers to itself as a supplement, is crammed with really cool new rules, charts and enemies, but is very light on physical components. It pretty much consists of some cardboard floor tiles and tokens and a rules book. The card elements were easy to reproduce. I have either sourced them from a core set of Advanced Heroquest or created my own using images found online. And by mounting the art on backed grey board of the correct thickness and then sealing the tiles with satin Mod Podge, I think I have managed to make something that doesn't look too far off the official elements. You can check out my previous videos about that if you want to. I'll link to them in the video description below. With that done, all that was left was the rules book. I had a complete PDF file, but as it weighed in at 97 pages and I didn't have a way to adequately print and bind it myself, I decided to turn to an online company. The company I chose are UK based and they are called Print Pond. This is what they delivered. Honestly, I couldn't be happier with this. It's really nicely done and any failure with it is on the part of the PDF I submitted. Print Pond actually have a very straightforward online ordering service. All you have to do is fill in one simple form. You select how many copies you want and how many pages are in the file you are submitting. Then you select your binding type. I briefly considered spiral bound because it would be easy to lay the book flat, but the option I ended up going for is a thermal seal. It looks really smart and the book is nice and flat when closed. You then have a whole bunch of other options you can select. So this example here is A4 sized black and white, printed front and back in portrait with left edge binding using a black seal. I went for 100 GSM white uncoated paper, which is a really nice mid-range quality. You can go all the way up to 300 GSM with a silk finish if you want to. I also asked for a standard cover to protect the book, so that's clear plastic on the front and a thick card on the reverse. And that's it. All told, including the postage, this cost me £10.28, and I ordered it one day and I received it the very next day, so that's exceptionally good value as far as I'm concerned. They even accommodated an additional request I made. The PDF I sent through had the back cover of the book as the first page of the file. I asked if they could move that to the end for me when compiling the book and they did so without any issue. So there we go, with the exception of not having a box, I have a complete Terror in the Dark expansion, and I didn't have to fork out over £300 to get it. But yeah, it took a bit of work. And was it worth it? I would say, sure. I think this expansion has a lot of really great content. One of the big things is the quest, a massive campaign that takes up fully half of the page count. It's quite difficult to get it up and running though, as you need a lot of miniatures for the different enemy types, none of which of course were included in the expansion. In fact, it's a bit cheeky in that regard, because the campaign is purposefully designed to make use of as many different major races of enemies as possible to maximise sales of miniatures. The first quest uses orcs, the second is chaos, the third is Skaven, the fourth is a mixed selection of enemies including chaos, orcs, even humans, and numerous very large enemies, and then the final quest makes use of undead enemies. Of course, you could proxy. You could use alternative miniatures or standees or buttons, but part of the joy of playing a game like this is collecting and painting the miniatures, and it's very telling that the campaign uses such a wide range of foes. I do wonder if it might have been better to include some smaller campaigns, each focused around different enemy types, but that's not what we get. That aside, the expansion adds new rules and fleshes out existing rules, often just compiling rules that were already published in copies of White Dwarf magazine. There are some general rules for adding the new special quest locations to randomly generated dungeons, with an extra layer of rules for adding special events like magically animated chains and slippery floors. You then get rules for the Light Wizard spellbook, which I think is my favourite spell set. I do wish they had leaned into the magic a bit more. They did publish some other official spell sets in White Dwarf, and there are plenty of unofficial spellbooks available from fans, but I think this expansion was a perfect opportunity to really drill into the magic, and they just didn't do that. Next up you get some new monsters. Always nice. Not anywhere near as many new monsters as I would have liked, but it does round out the undead selection by adding things like wights, vampires and ghouls, and the beastmen get added to the ranks of adversaries as well. However, the other really good thing added to this section of the rules is a complete set of monster matrices for all the different enemy types. In the core game, Games Workshop only provided matrices for creating groups of Skaven, but now you have ready to go charts for all of the enemies, which just makes it easier to set up your own campaigns or undertake a pick up and play dungeon plunge. You get new charts for Skaven, then Chaos, Orcs, Undead, Beastmen and Mixed. The only weird thing is that Chaos Thugs don't feature in the Chaos Matrices at all. Was Citadel trying to bin them off by 1991? I can't imagine they were. I mean, Battle Masters came out in 92 and that had Chaos Thugs in it, and Chaos Thugs do appear in the campaign in the Terror in the Dark expansion, just never in the Matrices. But I digress. The next section of the rules is probably my favourite thing, the expanded treasure tables. This section adds so much and adds great variety to the sorts of things you can find. The massively expanded selection of magical treasure really helps the game, because adventurers in Advanced Heroquest don't get new skills and powers as they advance. You can increase their stats and earn more fate points, but how they are equipped goes a long way towards how you play your character. The expansion also includes the rules for the special henchmen, including the Troll Slayer, Elf War Dancer and the Wizard's Apprentice. You may recall I had a Wizard's Apprentice in my Advanced Heroquest playthrough here on the channel. Sad times. Finally, there are some more tips for Dungeon Masters to give them ideas for campaign plot hooks, and there are revised exploration tables that increase the chances of finding a quest room over time, which theoretically stops random dungeons from running too long. All really solid inclusions. But I have to admit, until recently, there is one addition to the rules that I didn't know about, because it's introduced in the most bizarre way possible. There are a whole bunch of rules corrections, but they are scattered throughout the text for the new campaign, and as I had previously avoided reading that quest in depth, I never knew those revisions existed. I'm not going to go through them all, but there are some interesting clarifications to things that I have scratched my head over in the past. The first correction is one of the biggest ones because it was something that was always so glaring to me. In the core game, the rules for the longbow state you need a strength of 6 or more to use it, but the pre-generated elf character, armed with a longbow, only has strength 5. This gets corrected to requiring a strength of only 5 or more, thus allowing the elf to use the stuff he's equipped with, which makes a lot more sense. Another big one is that orcs get a nerf. They had a toughness of 8 in the core game, but that gets downgraded to a 7. This is probably a good thing, as there really was quite a difficulty spike when you moved from Skaven to orcs, yet they have the same points cost. The nerf brings them a little more in line, even if it does seem strange to make the orcs squishier. The next correction is another nerf, this time for Chaos Warriors. They are listed in the core game as rolling 6 damage dice, but this should only be 4. More importantly, there is a clarification for the Chaos Champion, which is listed as using a shield and a double-handed weapon. Turns out this is a special exception. The Chaos Champion can use the weapon with only one hand, even though his strength stat isn't high enough to suggest that's possible. For heroes and anyone else, they have to use 2 hands and cannot benefit from a shield at the same time. The next correction deals with one of the biggest areas of confusion. In the core game, Femurs are not listed as large monsters, although the picture on the unit card does show a Femur on a 40mm base. I always assumed that was so people could use the dinky versions from their Heroquest sets, although more recently I suspected it might be a trickle-down problem from the era with how Femurs were originally made. At the conceptual stage, and even up until early prototypes, they were envisioned and statted out as human-sized. However, there was some kind of miscommunication and they were eventually released as large monsters on 40mm bases, but with stats that did not reflect their mighty scale. Despite all that, it turns out, in Advanced Heroquest, it's just a cock-up. Femurs should be classed as large monsters, even if their stats don't quite match up. I'm probably going to rule that my Heroquest Femurs are lesser versions that take up a single space, and then if I ever grab a metal Femur, I will use that as a full-sized champion. Additionally, the Ogre Chieftain also gets upgraded to a large monster, although that was a much more obvious oversight on his core game unit card. Another interesting thing I never spotted is that Demonettes were originally given this spell Flaming Skull of Terror, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense when they already cause terror. They now get to cast Fireball instead. And I think that just about covers the main rules corrections. Sorry if that wasn't particularly interesting. But it was interesting to me as, like I said, until recently I didn't even know those corrections existed, and I suspect there may be some other people who play Advanced Heroquest and who have never looked through that campaign and seen those corrections either. But anyway, what are my final thoughts about this expansion? I think it's good. It really is more accurate to call it a supplement. Most of the new tokens you get with this expansion are just used with events that happen in the core game and should probably have been in the core game to begin with. And a lot of the new floor tiles are just more of what you already have to make sure you don't run out. In terms of things that are totally new, it really isn't much more than just the contents of the book. But that content is really solid. The expanded treasure section and monster matrices are excellent, and I like the special henchmen. The campaign is the biggest draw, but everything here feels like it completes the core game experience. It's never worth the prices people are asking for on eBay, but for the cost of getting a book printed and making a few tiles, it's definitely worth it. And I would say almost essential if you plan on playing Advanced Heroquest with the official rules rather than homebrew. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.